gentlemen, are you ready? It's Robot Mining time!
Welcome to the Bedrock Engineers Podcast, bringing you robot combat discussions for people who don't know what they're talking about.
It's carnage here in the Battlebots! Oh! Huge hit there! Now he's a fire-breathing dragon! Hey! Hold on! Woo! I feel like I'm in a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre! Getty, we're gonna need a bot medic!
Here are your hosts, Ben and Scott. We have a lot to discuss, don't we?
Yes, we do.
I'm happy to report that our first episode was warmly received, very warmly received.
That's awesome.
People didn't really have a lot to really sort of moan about, except that I need to stop interrupting you, which is very valid, because I was interrupting you a lot.
Don't worry about that.
I want to make it clear to the audience, Scott's exact words after we were done recording that first episode were, Ben, you were interrupting me, air quotes, a bit. You could not have understated that more, my friend.
Don't worry about that.
From editing during editing, I was listening to this with like just this scowl on my face, like, oh no, and
You had a lot to say.
I sure did. And one thing I didn't really imagine would be a problem, although I was face palming the entire time because I forgot about the fact that people hate the sound of their own voice on a recording, and as soon as I started editing this, as soon as I listened to it back the first time, I just was kind of going, oh, this was a terrible idea. I need to just cancel this podcast, abort this mission. This is not going to work. But people liked it. And out of all things, they said that I was well-spoken. You too, but I was really expecting people to be like, oh, man, your voice is annoying. You keep saying like, and...
No, you did good.
Yeah, and I'm happy about that. And there's one thing I need to correct myself on. Really not correct myself, but I said last episode that these fights were going to be aired in the order that they were shot. And at first, watching the episode, I thought I was completely wrong about that because this is not the order that they were revealed in. But then I found out that they did switch up the order of filming before they started.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
there's almost no way that these weren't edited to put in some order that they...
Well, I mean, these are apparently, as far as I know...
So they really were... They were fought in that order.
I think so, yes. But
Okay.
this is a very different order from how they were announced. Some fights are
really?
the same. Some fights are the same, but SawBlaze Rotator, which is the first fight, was supposed to be the fourth fight, and then Cobalt and SubZero, which is the second fight, they were supposed to fight two completely different robots, but they were switched. So now those two completely different robots are fighting each other in episode 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Has the fight card for episode 2 come out already?
No, but we know pretty much what it's going to be.
Well, how do we know that the fight card hadn't
Well,
come
because they've been sort of teasing images of the fights
out? Okay.
on Twitter and on Facebook. I know that Gigabyte versus Kronos is going to be in episode 2, which I'm excited for because those are two full body spinners, and full body spinner fights are always really good. But one thing that I was dead wrong about was that Bombshell versus Duck was going to be the first fight of the season, which doesn't sound wrong when you consider that it probably just was filmed at a later date, but I did straight up say it will be the first fight, and it was not. So, my mistake.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what do we think of the 2-hour runtime?
I liked it.
I
I thought it was great. I thought it was fine.
I thought the pacing was a little too slow in some parts, but especially since I thought there was going to be 8 fights per episode, and there kind of are, but the 8th fight...
No, there are 7 fights per episode.
The 8th fight is a Science Channel bonus, which means 7 fights per 2 hours. That means that there's an even lower density of fights in an episode than the first 2 seasons. And I liked the pit sections. They weren't like I was expecting, because I was expecting every fight to have a strategy and planning sort of thing and repair time afterward. What they did was it 2 or 3 segments where the reporter, I forget her name.
Jenny Taft.
Jenny Taft, right? Okay, this is where notes are handy, folks.
I liked Jenny Taft.
Ginny we'll get to her in just a second. But I actually really liked those pit sections, but it seemed as though they weren't enough to fill the runtime because they actually ended up having to cut to an ad break right before a judge decision twice in this episode.
Well, yeah, I mean, nobody likes commercials. I hate commercials. It almost makes me leave the show just to watch the commercials. But
I hate ads.
That's the modern That's the modern world. That's how you can finance these shows on TV. They wouldn't be on TV probably without the ads. So it is what it is.
The second one was really bad for Blacksmith and Quantum because it seemed almost as though they were cutting in the middle of a fight. But then when they came back and said, "All right, this is going to the judges," I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine."
They technically did cut in the middle of that fight. I mean, they stopped the fight.
Yeah. I have stuff to say about that.
Oh, me too.
Oh, I have stuff to say. I have a lot to say about this episode, and most of it is positive, but some of it is kind of negative. I'm sorry, but you criticize things you love, right?
You don't have to be sorry.
This is undoubtedly not as good of an opening episode as season 3's. Because season 3...
I don't really remember season 3. I mean, I didn't watch all of them, so...
I don't think you watched the first episode of season 3, but the first episode of season 3 was easily the best episode of that season. And I hope we go up from here, but this was about 80% as good as the season 3 premiere.
Well, I liked it, but I don't have anything to compare it to from past seasons.
Although 80% of that episode is still very, very, very good. This was a really good episode. Really, really good amount of fights that went the distance to the judges, and a really good amount of fights that ended in satisfying knockouts. Especially the last one, I think, even though the fight overall, we'll get to that. But, so Jessica Taft, during the pit sections, Ginny, right. I'm thinking of Jessica Chobot, who was the pit reporter the first 2 seasons. What did we think of her?
Oh, I thought she did great. Okay, I'm really thinking she's just beautiful. But
she is a gorgeous woman, yeah.
I thought she did pretty good. It's always difficult when you have the person, kind of the behind-the-scenes person, the sideline reporter or whatever you want to call them. They're not experts. Rarely are they experts in their field, and so it can look a little corny at times. But I really thought she did a pretty good job.
I thought she was.
What do you think?
I thought she was handing it up a little bit.
She was,
particularly when she was talking to Ray, and he described the red bar as having 50 times the amount of energy of an AK-47 rifle. Yeah. And she said, "Really, 50 times?" And I was just like, "Oh, that was a little."
Yeah, it is a little cringy.
That was a little awkward.
No, it is. It is. But looks matter. The people that are on TV all have to be relatively good looking. Kenny Florian and Chris Rose and Ginny Taft and even Farouk. They all have to be good looking enough to get on TV. So
Farouk's beard looks good. Hey, reference. But I especially loved the first section, the first little pit section where they showed the outside test box footage of Deep Six with clips cut in.
That was impressive.
It was cool, but what I loved the most was the clips cut in of Jenny watching it. You could very clearly tell we're filming much later.
I didn't really notice that.
There's no way.
I can tell you, if that robot hits something ever, which I don't think it's really going to work well, but if it hits something, my God, it's going to destroy it.
That robot exists for the one time it works.
Yeah.
And when it works, oh boy, it's going to work.
If it can hit something, it's going to kill it, man. It's very powerful. Very powerful. But I don't think it's going to be stable enough to actually work.
Oh, heck no. That is one of the least practical designs I've ever seen in my life.
But if it hits something, man, it's over with.
I'm gonna love that.
There's a tremendous amount of force.
The team actually said on Reddit that the bar at full speed is spinning at 200 miles an hour, and it has about 65 kilojoules of energy in it, which really, even though that's massive, was kind of like, really, is that it?
I don't really have any reference to say what does 65 kilojoules mean.
That would be about, 105 was 50 times the energy of an AK-47, right?
You mean to tell me that Tombstone has almost twice the energy?
Even though its bar is much smaller and lighter.
I don't believe that.
The thing is, that 105 kilojoule energy factor comes from when Tombstone had a 300 mile an hour tip speed. Whereas now it runs at 235 because the tip speed was lowered from 300 to 250 this season, or last season rather. In order to get the bars to spin at that low of a speed, each one was remade to weigh the same but be shorter with a shorter radius. And they also dropped the tooth on the weapon sprocket that drives the thing.
So they changed the gearing?
Slightly lower RPM, slightly shorter bar, roughly 235 miles an hour on the longest one currently, which is that, I think, aluminum one with the steel teeth, but it could be the red one, I don't know.
So you're telling me that Tombstone lowered its speed this season?
No, last season. Last season, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And they also did not have the red bar last season.
Is the red bar a different material?
It is just, I think, S7 tool steel, but I could be wrong about that. It could be Hardox or Armox.
Does anybody use AR500, which is
yes. When somebody says Armox, they mean AR500.
Oh, okay.
Which we'll get into that because that was the top armor Blacksmith had against Quantum, and Quantum just went straight through that.
Yeah, it did.
Yes, it did. Well, all right. I guess the only other thing to ask about in terms of production value is what did we think of Farouk, Kenny, and Chris?
They're all right. They're all a little corny, really, but
yeah, I thought it was a lot less corny than the last 3 seasons because Kenny and Chris were much more subdued this time, and they were kind of just talking and doing sort of a comedy routine amongst themselves, and it was really good. It was much better than before, where it was never really funny. I don't think they're ever going to be as iconic of a duo as Adam and Jamie from Mythbusters.
probably not.
Is really the conclusion I'm going to draw. Farouk's intros, though, were great this episode, especially Kraken's. Yeah. This is rated R. Get it? Because they're pirates, but no.
I think that whole thing's a little ridiculous, but you know.
Farouk exists entirely for his intros to be just the wonderment of schlock and cheese, and they're great. Although, of course, much like last season, I'm probably going to start out loving him and then just kind of playing on my phone whenever he's on.
They're too corny for me.
By episode 10, I'm usually pretty tired of it.
Yeah. I don't really get into it. But, you know, again, anything on TV has to have, you know, a lot of theatrics, so.
Yeah. So, with all that out of the way, I guess there's nothing left to do but get right into the fights. We will start with SawBlaze versus Rotator. What are your thoughts?
Well,
on not the fight just yet, but the robots. Let's talk about Rotator first, because they had a very interesting incident behind the pits.
Well, yeah, didn't they start off broken before the fight? I mean, they weren't ready to go.
They were not ready to go.
Their lower spinner on the front, I guess it would be, or the lower one,
whichever one.
They had to pull it off and put a wedge on. I think it's really bad, man, when you go into the start of the season already injured. I mean, these aren't athletes; they should have been ready to go.
I have an interesting series.
Why was it broken? Were there pre-fights before this that we haven't seen?
No, there was testing. You have to spin your weapon up to full speed. So, to make sure.
So they got damaged in testing.
Yes. What happened was they have upped their speed, the speed of their spinners, to be more destructive this season, up to almost the tip speed limit. And what happened during testing was the team. Right before filming started, they posted, "We just broke one of our weapon discs." That was not exaggerated for dramatic effect on the television show. What happened was they spun up the disc, and then one of the steel teeth just broke off and flew away, and then presumably because of the massive imbalance, the whole robot just...
Oh, that would be a big problem.
Oh, yes. It destroyed a motor casing and bent that part of the frame, which I'm guessing that the weapon that broke was on that part that was detached for this fight and replaced with the wedge, because that part was just messed up. And so they had to remake both discs. So this was their original disc. I've got a picture that I'm showing Scott of that can be found on the Facebook page. So this was the original disc, and then this is the disc they made afterward.
So they should be able to get fully back up to speed.
Yes, they did pass safety with this disc, which is clearly much.
Well, that's
much
a bummer, man. But
thicker.
you know, anytime you've got mechanical things break.
Oh yes. But be it as it may, unfortunately, they were not ready for this fight.
No, they were not.
And they had to use their much weaker bar spinner that they usually would only run against vertical spinners. Well, as sad as it was, did you have anything more to say on...
Well, I mean, you know, Rotator clearly wasn't ready to go. And do you want to talk about SawBlaze?
I guess so.
They were ready to go, at least.
I'm sure. About it. Well, not really, actually. They had a problem with their weapon as well, which
What was that?
Well, apparently, so I messaged Jameson after I watched the preview. Thanks, by the way. I watched the preview of the first hour, and of course, the first fight was in there. And what happened was I messaged him and asked him, like, hey, like, you know, great first fight, but what was up with the saw? He said, well, thanks. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We were still tuning up parameters in our speed controller at this point, so we hadn't quite nailed that down yet. So that saw was barely getting spun up, essentially.
Well, I didn't think it was very effective.
But it seemed to be it almost looked like there was way too much friction there stopping it. Because every time I tried to get going, it kind of twitched a little bit for like 5 seconds and then very slowly
Well, that's what a
spin.
speed controller will do if it's jacked up.
Yes, and then they announced later on Facebook publicly that they really screwed that up on their speed controller. And they knew it was a problem going in, and they were just like, well, hopefully we can outdrive them, which they did. But I'm sure that everybody is really eager to hear how I think of this new version of SawBlaze now that I've actually seen it fight. Because this is my favorite robot. A lot of people were skeptical of its new design. And I can say, for my money, I really like it. It's probably just as good as the old one in my mind. I need to see it fight a few more times, I think, to really, you know, with the forks and with their new bar spinner coming over top, because we haven't seen that yet.
Right, yeah. They can put on both a saw blade or a spinner, huh?
Yeah.
Is that a disc spinner?
It is a saw, and the other spinner will be a bar spinner that looks like a dragon head.
Is that called a disc spinner?
No, it's a bar. It's closer to a bar than a flat.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I'm with you.
And they've also got this really new swanky drive system, completely brushless, much more traction on the wheels.
So will the bar spinner spin the same direction as the saw blade? Because
Yes,
it seems
forward.
to me
Forward.
so that saw blade was spinning so that it would throw sparks away from it or towards
No.
it.
It was spinning forward, meaning that it'll throw sparks towards it.
Seems to me like with a bar spinner, when you put that on there, you would want that to be more of an undercut, meaning you'd hit from the bottom and flip it out, then knock it towards you.
Well, vertical spinners do spin up to throw people up into the air.
Exactly.
But when you have that sort of thing, you do want it to be spinning forward so that when you hit them, first of all, a lot more energy is able to be transferred spinning toward you because they're pinned between your wedge and your
your point.
Yeah. So I guess nothing left to do but talk about the fight then, which was pretty good, I guess.
I thought it was pretty good.
There's no doubt.
I mean,
whatsoever.
Actually, let's be honest. Rotator didn't do much.
Rotator really didn't do anything.
SawBlaze was all over him.
Oh yeah, it was, as Kenny put it, all SawBlaze all the time.
It was.
There's no doubt in my mind, and in Victor Soto's mind either. He's the driver of Rotator. He told me as well. I messaged him too. I said, "Well, why didn't you guys run the two bar spinners?" And he said, "Because our entire frame was messed up on that side." And I would have loved to run both discs, which would have been the better choice for this fight.
They were clearly injured.
Yes, they were absolutely not. That weapon and those forks as well were not very effective at causing SawBlaze any kind of trouble.
No, not at all. Well, so you're basically telling me that both of these units were not at 100%, right?
Right.
Yeah.
SawBlaze was at a strong 90.
Well, then we expect more from them.
Yes, absolutely. I really want SawBlaze's saw to be as effective again as it was last season.
Yeah, because it didn't look super effective to me.
No, it got stopped quite easily.
Yeah, it
actually.
did.
Not only did it have trouble spinning up to full, but when it made contact, it just kind of jammed up and stopped. Two of the 3 times it used it.
So SawBlaze is a vertical spinner, or really more of a chop saw.
Yes.
And that could be either a saw or a bar spinner. Mm-hmm. And Rotator is a horizontal spinner.
Yes.
Disc spinner?
It usually uses discs, but against verticals,
It could have a bar.
Yes,
Okay.
the bars have a lot less energy in them, and Rotator
Really?
bars just have less energy than discs of the same radius because the discs have so much weight all the way around the ring.
Well, that makes sense.
But Rotator's bar seems to have so little inertia in it. I don't even think the paint was very scratched on SawBlaze's wedge by the end of it. In fact, the gyroscopic forces of that horizontal spinner weren't even high enough to stop Rotator from popping a wheelie when it drove forward.
Right. Yeah, SawBlaze was on him. I got SawBlaze pinning him 3 times, sawing him up, not super effective. I scored it 7-0, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think I can give Rotator a single point. They really didn't do any damage. SawBlaze didn't do any damage either, but...
I mean, there'd be 3 points for damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 points for control and 2
Yes.
points for aggression.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't see that Rotator could even get a point in any way on damage, and certainly not any points for control or aggression. So
Absolutely
I
not.
say
They
7-0 is what I got that one.
Yeah,
as.
they were on the back foot the entire time. So
I'm a little surprised that when they announce the fight winner, they don't say 7-0.
They never announced the judges' scorecards,
Okay.
which I think is a really bad thing that they should start doing, because it could lead to a lot less confusion with
Certainly.
split judges' decisions.
Well, I'm guessing on a split decision, they will then have the score.
No, they won't. They
That's
don't.
ridiculous.
They never
They
have.
should.
They never have.
They should.
Yeah. How well do you think the 2 rubber panels on SawBlaze's front
I
worked?
didn't really see any. I didn't even notice that, man. I mean, they talked about it. I didn't really, I didn't get much out of that.
There was one good slow-mo shot of Rotator's bar chopping right through one of those, and it didn't
I
seem to be
didn't
slowing
watch
down
it
at
6
all.
times either. So.
Oh, yeah, true. Like I did.
I just watched it live on TV, as it was broadcast, and that's it. Nothing
Yeah.
online at all.
So I've got one more thing to say about this fight, and it's that SawBlaze's shoulder-mounted flamethrower thing is fucking stupid, and it should have been left out of this version entirely. Why is it up there? Why is it up there? Why is it not lower and more in the middle?
Yeah, it wasn't very effective at all.
The fire is usually not effective, but at least on the head of the saw, it
It
was
should be
last
directed
season.
right onto your enemy.
Right onto them, yeah. But it wasn't. So it usually was just going right over top of Rotator.
Yeah.
So if they fight a small opponent like Minotaur or I don't know any other matchups, but you can imagine that flame wouldn't do anything. All right. See, this is why I had why I have to have this up, because I actually couldn't remember the next fight. So next up was Cobalt versus SubZero.
Yep.
So if Cobalt's color scheme looks a little familiar to you, then the reason for that is because these are the same guys who built that Carbide robot from Robot Wars. Remember from the Nuts video?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. These are the same guys. And I
Okay.
actually am shocked that last time we filmed, I completely forgot to mention that I actually own one of Carbide's wheels.
Oh, yeah. That's
It's at my
right. You
apartment.
do.
Yeah. I won it in an eBay bid for $320.
That's not winning. Well, I guess it is winning, isn't it?
It is winning.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is winning.
So Cobalt's a vert spinner.
It is winning.
Cobalt's a vert spinner, right? Vertical spinner?
Vertical spinner,
Is it
yes.
a disc?
That is a disc, yes.
Okay.
That is what you would call a disc, or a flywheel. But
So they won China and in the UK, huh?
yes, when they say that, they're referring to, they can't mention them by name because of legal disputes and all
Sure.
that jazz, but when they say UK, they mean Carbide won a season of Robot Wars, and then when they
Okay.
say China, they're talking about a show called This Is Fighting Robots.
Okay.
And their robot there was called Tombstone. It looked like a red, white, and blue version of Cobalt, but with a much less mean-looking disc. This weapon looks so cool. It is so cool. It is the coolest looking vertical spinner I have ever seen, with those nasty looking teeth on the back to balance that one big tooth.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
They look pretty cool.
That's about all there is really to say about Cobalt, I guess. Other than that, you see in their official images, they look really weird. Like the robot looks like it's extremely long. It looks like a bus. But in person, I mean, not in person, I've never seen this thing in person, but on TV, it looks wonderful. Yeah. So this picture does not do it justice. SubZero then, a robot that I have really, really disliked in the past 2 seasons that I now really like a lot more because it looks good.
Just on looks, huh?
Just
I don't
on
know.
looks.
Looks don't do much for me. SubZero's a flipper. Is it a pneumatic or hydraulic flipper? Do you
Pneumatic.
know?
There is one hydraulic flipper in this season, though, called
Do you like flippers?
Flippers are all right.
Yeah, they can be pretty cool.
Can be pretty cool, but I don't like the American versions of the flippers. I like the UK wedge flippers more.
Okay.
A lot more.
Okay.
Because I kind of just think that the American flippers with their really long bodies are just kind of an impractical design.
So I don't remember. Did they have exposed wheels?
They had some wheel guards that seemed to be made out of like plastic or something. I think it was HDPE.
Let me just say for the record, I am opposed to exposed wheels.
Well, I mean, I'm opposed to them if there's no clear way to protect them or if they're not for redundancy, because Battlebots likes exposed wheels.
Even though-
As long as there's a big weapon or a big wedge in the front, Or if you have 6 wheels and they're for redundancy. So if you lose one, you still got 5. It's a lot better than wheel guards. I've kind of been converted over the course of a few years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that SubZero should have just left their wheel guards off because they didn't do anything in this fight. SubZero was easily the ugliest robot of seasons 2 and 3. It looked like a big boxy oil tanker, pretty much like an ocean liner with a turning circle about equivalent to that of the actual Titanic. The weapon was not effective. It only got, I think, a few flips in one fight.
It wasn't very effective.
In 2 seasons, yeah. It was so ugly. And then in the sort of tunnel shots of it before a fight, it looked even worse because it was like a ground level camera angle, and you could see under the robot, and you could see how far under it the wheels were, and how far the sides of the robot extended over those wheels. It literally looked like a tram. It looked like a guy who's like a fat guy who's wearing a belt and his fat's just spilling over the sides. It was disgusting. I hated it. But this season it looks really, really good.
Yeah, I didn't have too many thoughts on his looks.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not familiar with this robot's history, which I'm really not, you're not going to be a big fan. I'm still not really a big fan of it, but I like how it looks. I didn't like how it looked after this fight, though.
No.
It was fun to watch. But it probably wasn't fun to be the SubZero team. It's got a little
underbelly damage now.
Cobalt is terrifying. Wow, I mean, geez. It seems as though it's like, not only did Cobalt win the ground battle with its little fork on the front, which, by the way, Cobalt looks way better with that fork on the front than it does without. But every hit did something significant. The first hit destroyed SubZero's right fork, and then the next hits just all tore up the underbelly.
Cobalt was all over SubZero.
Oh my goodness! It seems like that spinner gets hits that I've never seen before. Where with a robot like Bite Force, it does a huge uppercut that does a giant chunk of damage. But Cobalt seems to, and Minotaur seems to get like shreds, right? Because it's too fast to get an actual engagement. Cobalt does both on the exact same hit, because even though it did huge damage and tossed SubZero in the air just like Bite Force, the sound of it getting hit was not a bang. It was more like because that tooth just hit a bunch of times every time they instigated contact with each other.
Knocked a wheel off.
Knocked the wheel off, yeah, but also every time it looked like Cobalt got a good hit, you'd see the underbelly of SubZero, and there was like a 2-foot-long gash in the underside. Instead of a big hole, it was like the entire...
Oh, no, it cut it open.
Oh, yes, it did. I think that might be because the disc is very thin, because Bite Force's bar is literally the width of a dollar bill. It's several inches wide. Cobalt's looks like it's very thin, so when it hits, it goes through it, and maintains some of its speed and comes around and hits again. Despite getting a big engagement every time, it goes through several times. Which, man, this is probably some of the most satisfying hits I've ever seen from a vert. And this fight easily makes it so that Cobalt is one of my favorites to win the season.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
I wasn't that impressed. I mean, I thought it did well, but I didn't think of it as a season winner.
Really?
Yeah, I thought of it as something that'll make it to the Sweet 16 maybe. But, we saw 14 robots, though, and we have 67, so I'm kind of holding back judgment on that.
I mean, it is safe to be a little skeptical of a new robot. Even I know that it's based on a robot that did win a competition, but at the same time, yeah.
I mean, I guess part of the reason I'm saying that is because I didn't really think SubZero was much of a competition.
It wasn't.
So, you can't say, in my opinion, that you're now a favorite to win the season when you've had one fight against what I would consider a subpar opponent.
Yeah, but at least we know it works, right?
Well, it did work.
Yes.
It did work.
Yes.
And it was the second fight, and they were ready to go, unlike the first fight, which those two neither were ready to go. So that's important. Mm-hmm. Being ready to go is always better than just having a great design that's not really ready to go.
Yeah. I've been saying on Reddit for a while, and I told you last episode that I prefer fights that are very evenly matched and they're like duels. But there is one exception to that, and it's a fight like this where it's a robot's first fight ever, and they get to just show off, pretty much. That's really what this was just Cobalt showing off.
So let me ask you, do you time the fights, by the way?
I mean, they usually
I know they
show
do.
the clock.
For instance, like the first fight that was, went to the judges. If you would have timed that, would it have been exactly 3 minutes? Are they cutting out parts of the fight?
They're cutting out boring parts, probably only a few seconds, but they're also cutting to the teens, right? So they probably
In the
play
middle
a
of
few replays.
yeah.
Like for
I'm
example,
not a fan of that, man. I want it to be time accurate. If the fight was 1 minute and 2 seconds, I want 62 seconds of fighting.
As long as it doesn't influence the audience's perception in the event of a possible judge's decision, then like if they kept doing a replay of that first pin of SawBlaze against Rotator, and it literally looked like they pinned him for like 45 seconds or something, and then like later on it'd be like, well, I guess SawBlaze did win that fight, but if they did that in another fight where the robot that pinned the other guy ended up losing, the audience would be like, what? They had him pinned for like 7 years, man.
Yeah, the editing you got to be careful of.
Yeah, you really do. But
well, Cobalt killed him. Cobalt clearly knocked him out.
Although Cobalt looked immobile by the end of the fight because it drove over some scrap metal on the floor.
Yeah, it did. Is that also the guy that attacked too quickly? And they're all talking about how he's such a great driver. And
What?
Is Cobalt's driver regarded as being a great driver?
Yeah, he's a really good driver.
Is he the one that said, "Why did I keep hitting him"?
No, that was Will Bales later on.
Okay.
Yeah, much later. But can you imagine if SubZero had managed to start moving again after Cobalt drove over that scrap metal, and SubZero won the fight because Cobalt couldn't move?
Well, that can happen.
Yeah, it has happened before.
Yeah, definitely.
That would have been such a funny meme, like for just a long time on the subreddit.
Well, it didn't happen.
I can't imagine what would have gone down if that had happened. Kraken versus Ribbot. I'm not saying Ribbot because that's stupid.
Yeah, I agree. I hate that name. I hate the name Ribbot.
A robot that I initially thought was a cluster bot because when they were announced on Facebook for being in the season, they had 4 pictures of it. So I thought it was going to be 4 frogs in a cluster bot fighting with each other.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that either. So Ribbot or Ribbot is a vertical spinner.
It is it's a vertical, a horizontal, a lifter, and a wedge. I think can be one of its options, like some sort of wedge.
So it can be both a vertical and a horizontal.
It's a modular robot.
Yeah,
it can
right.
switch out its weapon for different types of things depending on what the fight can be. And a lot of people don't like that, but come on, it's a frog.
Yeah, I know.
How can you not love this thing? And actually,
I don't know about that.
you want to know something mind-blowing about Ribbot?
Yes, I do.
So there's a guy on the team named Carl Ehlers. He has an afro, right? That guy is my eye doctor's nephew.
No, really?
Yeah. Last week, not last week, a few weeks ago, I went in to have my glasses prescription updated, and I casually mentioned that I've started a Battlebots podcast, and he said, well, my nephew's on one of those teams, and I was like, really? Which one? So the guy at the front looked it up for us, and he was like, he's on Team Ribbot. And I was like, holy cow, really? So, yeah, Carl Ehlers, I've already let the team know this, by the way, they thought it was awesome, but Carl Ehlers, yeah, is the teammate who is my eye doctor's nephew, and after, I got back to get my new prescription for my glasses a little while later, having already seen the first half of this episode from its from its little preview, and I got the honor of showing that eye doctor his nephew's Battlebots first fight, and man, the smile on his face was so heartwarming. He was genuinely so proud of his nephew for being on this team, and
finally did something.
Dang it, Carl! But yeah, he loved it. He was so proud.
Well, what do you think of modular robots?
Well, I like them. I think there's a little bit of an argument to be made with it's kind of a cheap thing to do. Not a cheap thing in terms of money, but in that you can change your robot to be exactly the counter for the other guy every time.
Well, that's pretty nice. I mean, it's an advantage.
It's an advantage, but you kind of I also kind of can't help but think that there's one of those things that's just the best one because the other ones are a little worse, so you just use that every time.
I agree. I wonder if they made the right choice.
Sometimes it may feel like a gimmick a little bit, because I can't imagine them
ever
using the lifter. Because why would you use the lifter of all things?
I don't know.
Well, this robot's frog suit thing is made of foam and it weighs only 13 pounds. underneath that frog suit, which Kraken very humorously pointed out, because they said, we were really happy to be fighting this until they took off that frog suit and revealed that the robot underneath it is, quote-unquote, billet porn. Expertly milled, expertly built, a completely competitive design in every way, just with a frog over the top of it. So they were suddenly very worried, oh no. It's a really good robot, I think. It's a solid mid-tier, I think.
Ribbot?
Ribbot, yeah. And I'm really hoping that they go far. But one thing, and this isn't a spoiler, by the way, one thing that my eye doctor did tell me is that when Carl got back, they said everybody loved us, but that we're not going to be allowed to use the foam next season if we come back because it takes forever to clean up.
Oh yeah, well that
because it just got shredded and flung everywhere.
That makes. I mean, that's it's a gimmick. You don't need that crap.
Yeah, but it's a frog.
Who cares?
They got to find it. If they want the frog thing again,
it's a robot. Fight the robot.
But if they want to do the frog thing again, they're going to have to find something besides the foam to use.
Good.
Well,
I'm not a fan of making your robot look like a stupid frog.
Come on, man.
No.
You other brothers can't deny. Kraken.
What do you think of Crushers, man?
Crushers, I used to love because I used to watch the old Robot Wars clips of Razor on YouTube. Nowadays, Crushers suck. Although that clearly has changed by the end of this episode.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well, I mean, I thought Kraken's Crusher, Tooth Crusher, did pretty good.
it was really effective. They are one of the few Crushers ever built that's not hydraulic. It's actually pneumatic.
Really?
It doesn't use a cylinder, and the reason it's so slow is because it's actually what it is like you see the like the top of the head right there, the skull part, and the jaw actuates downward. What it is that inside the skull there's a very strong airbag in there that's made of like Kevlar with steel bands that inflates and pushes that top jaw down and pushes the teeth down.
Yeah.
The obvious disadvantage is that the further it inflates, the less pressure it actually has because the air has to compress a little like further down. So once the jaw is shut, it's not going to be crushing all that hard.
Was it very responsive? I can't really remember.
It was very responsive. It's just a little slow. That's
not responsive. That's slow. I mean,
well, it's perfectly responsive, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't seem to be having any problems throughout the fight. But yeah, it really, really was a terrible robot last season.
So it has a little air pump in there and just pumps up the bag?
Yes, a little hose that connects it to the thing. And I just realized I said the obvious disadvantage, but I didn't say the obvious advantage, which is that it's very light and it's also really cool, meaning that they're going to be accepted to the next season probably. Because it's a unique thing, and I don't really see anything wrong with the design. Other than
they get that air hose busted, they're good. Of course, that's the same with hydraulics.
Hydraulic, yeah, because hydraulic also has to have a hose. But,
sure.
That's a really cool idea, and it really seems to work.
Well, it did. It crunched down on them hard. What do you think of the rule that you have to let go of them?
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree, because you could just hold on for the entire fight and just win.
Well, that's the goal. That is the goal, to win.
Yeah, but that's not fair. That's bullshit.
Well, it's fighting. There's not much that should be fair in fighting. I mean,
but this is a competition with rules.
I hear you.
Yeah, it's kind of like how you can only pin for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And that one really makes sense because,
well, we don't want what we don't want is what happens in the UFC where one guy wrestles a guy to the ground and just stays on top of him. It's boring as hell.
But also, it makes logical sense to me because if you're pinning a guy and you just if you're allowed to hold him there for the entire fight and you just do, then. Sure, you may win a judge's decision, but what about the ref counting you out for not moving? You'd have to not move to pin, right?
Yeah, I think the main reason that they have this rule is so that we see action and so that it's exciting.
Yes.
Because otherwise, you just pin somebody and that'd be it.
But also, it does make logical sense, especially since, and for a grapple as well. Like if you're a lifter and you lift a guy in the air and just hold him there. Then and you're allowed. If you were allowed to do that for 3 minutes, then somebody could just say, "Well, you could just count out the other guy." And it's like, but you're not moving either, so it would be a double KO, right?
Yeah, that's no, I don't think of it that way. One guy is clearly immobilized because he's in the grasp of another guy. I mean, you're doing something when you're holding a. If it's a fight, one guy's holding another guy down. Of course, he's not moving, but he's clearly got him under control.
Yeah, but humans are different from these machines.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Would you believe me if I told you that what was it, 40,000 pound figure that they gave for Kraken's teeth pressure?
That's what they
was
said.
actually less than it really is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's actually closer to 60,000.
Wow.
Yeah. I could be, maybe that's quantum. I can't remember though. I think Kraken was somewhere between 20 and 30 tons. 40,000 is the low end of that estimate though, which is crazy. They also have a flamethrower, which they didn't use throughout the entire fight.
Kraken does?
Kraken does, yeah. A flamethrower at the back of the mouth. And there's no real reason why a Crusher can't make good use of a flamethrower. Really, any control bot. But they didn't use it until the end, where they used it by accident. When they set the controller down, they accidentally pressed a button. The flame came out and set the thing on fire. And them apologizing profusely was cut out of the episode. But the Ribbot guys wanted them to do it. They didn't. They
So
were like,
is that how Ribbot caught fire?
yes, Kraken spat out the fire at them by complete accident. But Ribbot was going, why didn't you do that during the fight, man? That would have been cool. But yeah, that was cut out,
So
unfortunately.
Ribbot was some MIT students, right?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
I think so, too.
Who are taking the semester off to build this robot.
Right.
That's about all there is to say about the two robots. What did you think of the fight?
I thought Kraken kicked Ribbot's ass.
I especially loved that part where they got the grab, and then despite having the bent teeth,
They did have a bent tooth.
but despite that, they got a hold, and then a few seconds after that, both robots kind of started to tilt a few degrees, and then
It punched right through
punched
it. man.
right through it. And I wish that dang frog suit wasn't on there so we could see the damage.
Well, yeah. I mean, the frog suit, I could care less if it's a frog suit, but if you're actually using it as armor or some sort of protection...
Oh, there's no way this thing can be armor.
Well, yeah. If you're using it for some sort of protection, even if it's taking up space in the grip of your opponent or something, the grip of your opponent, I'm okay with that. But other than that, I hate the robot suit or the frog suit.
Oh man, I'm so sorry that you're wrong, but yeah, this was a really good fight as well.
How would you have scored it?
Kraken definitely won, but I think I may have given Ribbot one of the damage points. Maybe?
Yeah, I would have too. I scored it
definitely.
6-1.
6-1, yeah, that sounds fair.
Kraken 6, Ribbot 1.
Ribbot, sorry.
Because Ribbot did get a blow on him, and
Ribbot
bent
did
that
get
tooth.
a good number of blows.
I wondered if he would be effective after that tooth got bent, but he still was.
They were, yeah. Apparently, they got the bite with the less bent tooth, and they also got a little bit of their front fork, like the side, scuffed up a bit, and also the plastics covering the internals of the skull got a little bent out of shape. But other than that, Kraken was fine. I especially like the eyes on that robot. They were originally supposed to turn red whenever they were using the Crusher, but they didn't put that in time. And by the time they figured out how to do it, they were like, well, we've already passed safety. Let's not take the robot apart and mess with anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely a worthy win by Kraken, and I hope that they solidify themselves as a good robot this season. They might make the final 16, they might not, but hopefully they do.
Well, I'm guessing that, when you pick 16 teams, are you going to put 2 Crushers in? Because I have a feeling I know what Crusher will get in.
Oh, yes, but we will get to that later, and probably some reasons why it might just miss out on the final 16, but...
Do you see either of these two make into the final 16?
I see Kraken probably making it. I see Quantum definitely making it, but possibly missing out. But
we're not talking about Quantum.
We're not talking about Quantum just yet. Sorry. I thought you meant Kraken and Quantum.
No.
Kraken and Ribbot. Ribbot maybe a little less likely, but Kraken probably kind of likely.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I thought maybe Kraken could.
Maybe Kraken could. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're very well driven.
And if Ribbot can get an effective weapon or something, maybe they can do it too, but we'll see.
Well, their weapon seems to be really good.
It worked okay.
It worked okay. They never really got it.
Crusher was more effective than I thought it was.
Oh, yes.
Pinning someone takes away their force, man.
Modern Crushers usually suck because they don't have enough power to get through the modern
Well, they
steel
might have
armor.
solved that problem.
I think they solved that problem because both Crushers that we've seen in this episode are crazy.
Yeah, they got some power, man, no doubt.
Endgame versus Death Roll. And something interesting I noticed about Endgame is that the cross-section of their bar they were using in this fight, it looks like exactly the same shape that Ribbot's bar looked.
So I got these both vertical disc spinners, or was one of them a bar?
Death Roll is a little bit between a disc and a bar. It's a little more rounded than a bar, but Endgame's is definitely a bar.
Okay, but they're
Yes.
both vertical spinners at least.
Yeah. And the reason, apparently, that Endgame didn't use their disc, their actual disc, was because the disc was still getting balancing work done. It wasn't quite, spinning very well.
Right.
It was shaking a little bit. So, this was a big upgrade from last season's Endgame. It looks very different now, and it's got the sunglasses self-rider, which is so cool. That's so funny. Oh, man. So, yeah, disappointing season for Endgame last year, but a big redesign, and they've got the hinged forks now, like Bite Force, so they should be very good at getting under opponents. The weapon seems to hit very hard. That's about all there is to really say, I guess. I'm still not really the biggest fan of Endgame, but they do look pretty cool this time around, so I hope they go far.
Yeah, we'll see. They might need to work on their strength.
Might need to work on their
reliability.
Self-righting mechanism, yeah. Those exposed motors on the side.
For the
pisses
record,
me off.
we're not talking about the fight yet, so we'll get to that.
But those exposed motors on the sides of their Shremek, the two red Outrunners, piss me off so much.
Dude, if you got anything exposed, it's going to get knocked off.
But I hate how that looks. It didn't get knocked off, but I hate how it looks. The Shremek itself with the sunglasses looks amazing, but those exposed motors, man, I don't like looking at that. It bugs me.
Yeah.
Death Roll, on the other hand, looks amazing.
Yeah, it looked okay.
Oh, what?
I mean, I don't get all excited about the looks, man. I want the action. Looks. That's
Well-
just paint and...
Well, you certainly got a lot of action in this fight. So Death Roll, the last time they were on Battlebots was in Season 2. They looked very different back then, and they had a really long
So when
tail.
you say Season 2, is that 2016?
2016, yes.
So there was no 2017 fights, right?
There was no 2017 fights.
Okay.
Battlebots had a year-long hiatus.
Okay.
A year and a half, I think. And this time they've come back from the King of Bots in China competition, which is what This Is Fighting Robots was a spin-off of. They fought there with a robot called Great White, which was extremely similar to this one, and this design is now a further, refined version of that one. So their Shremek for this season is a severed hand holding a big butcher knife, and they didn't use it in this fight. Why? That is the best Shremek ever. It is 10 times better than the sunglasses.
Man, I could care less whether you strap sunglasses or a frog or a hand with a knife on the bottom. Who cares, man? That's all crap.
I think we're all learning here that Scott is just a heathen that doesn't care about art.
No, I don't. It's fighting. Let's get it on, man.
But I think that Shremek is just one of the best and funniest designs, and I am so sad they didn't use it. But the Shremek they did use, just the arm without the hand and the knife. They didn't even need to use it once, even though they self-righted a bunch of times.
Are we talking about the fight?
I guess so, yeah. We're just moving right on because I don't really have a lot to say about Death Roll either, except that the paint looks amazing, and the way they did that stripy design was by using fishnets.
Well, Endgame knocked the crap out of Death Roll.
Oh, yes. Death Roll...
And Death Roll had... Really, that whole spinning around thing after that hit was all Death Roll's inertia from that bar, just making it look crazy, man.
It was doing death rolls.
It was. It was doing death rolls.
Wow, yeah. I was like, from the promotional images and from that first minute of the fight that I got to see last week, I just totally thought, well, Endgame has this. They're going to win. Because Death Roll's forks were completely destroyed. They couldn't have gotten under Endgame.
Death Roll was out of control, man.
Oh, yes. And the fact that robot is very compact and also from certain angles looks very round, it looked like it was a boulder rolling around. It was so satisfying.
It did.
It was really fun to watch. That hit...
let's be honest, man. Death Roll got its ass kicked. The only reason Death Roll won is because Endgame took itself out.
Yeah, they got a weapon-to-weapon hit that knocked both robots to Kingdom Come.
And the whole... I mean, I don't know that the self-rider would or would not work. It didn't get a chance to work because the robot was dead.
Well, we've seen testing videos. We know it works, but it was just out of commission.
We don't know if it works in the fight, though. I mean, bottom line is, it was dead.
It was dead. It moved a little bit, but it never got the robot back on
Barely.
its wheels.
I mean, the robot was dead. It lost power. I would say electrical power personally, but...
Probably. Or maybe the motors were just a little too shocked by that point to function properly.
Well, I mean, that big hit that it put on them...
Oh, man, that hit was like...
I would have to say that took out, some sort of electronic control.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Death Roll was way more fucked up than this.
No doubt about it.
But that hit that they both got on each other, that weapon-to-weapon, bar-to-bar hit, was amazing.
Yeah, it was a big hit.
That
was a big hit.
That was a hefty sound it made. That was a proper clank.
You know, and that's proof right there that, you know, you need to be able to absorb damage to win this thing. That's really what it's going to, you know.
Oh, yes.
It's huge. Your ability to put a hit on somebody is maybe not as important as your ability to survive your own hit or their hit.
Yeah, absolutely. Just getting the hair off the mic there. Anything more to say on this fight other than just it was amazing and I loved it?
No. KO.
KO, yeah. Good scrap though. Very good scrap at the beginning. Not a lot of hits being dealt to Death Roll. Really, just a lot of Death Roll being sent flying and rolling and tumbling around.
Well, yeah, that whole thing was just Death Roll's old inertia, you know, doing that to him.
It did stop at one point, but then the weapon motor was still, I guess, turned on because the weapon started dragging it across the floor for a few feet, and then it hit the wall and kept going. Like that was funny that they kind of did that to themselves. But yeah, Death Roll gets a win, and it was absolutely deserved because they survived the hits, they landed one of their own, and it killed Endgame.
Yeah, they did survive the hits.
That bar looks really cool as well. I guess we haven't really talked about that, but yeah, that shark tooth looking bar, or crocodile tooth, whatever, looks pretty dank.
So both of those were bar spinners.
Bar spinners, yes, although Endgame usually uses a flywheel, which has some more energy in it, but I doubt it really would have made a difference in this fight.
Do you get worked up about the whole Australia versus New Zealand thing?
I couldn't care less.
Me neither.
I didn't even know they were like friendly rivals until I saw this fight because
I could care less.
I don't care.
No.
I mean, I couldn't care less. You mean? Because if you could care less, that means you care somewhat.
Whatever.
Right? Pedantics. Yeah, HyperShock versus Valkyrie. I felt really bad for HyperShock during that little preview because they made it very clear that HyperShock last season was a bad robot. Their only win was against a cheeseburger.
Well, I mean, you know, their owner or whatever, driver, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, he said, we want to suck less.
Yeah.
That pretty much says it all right there.
And I think the lead up to this fight had the funniest joke of this entire season. Not this entire season, what the heck. This entire episode. Because I like jokes that have a sort of long build up and then a pause before the punchline. Where what they did was he showed the thing that said we need to suck less, and then several minutes later he then brings it back up again. He's like, hey, I just got this same note from the producers. We need to suck less, and that was funny. That was so good.
I didn't think that was funny at all.
Ah, well, wow. Okay, I guess you just suck. But HyperShock looks a lot better this season. They have less yellow on them, but I think that the bright colors sort of do a lot more for the aesthetic in moderation.
So HyperShock is a vertical disc spinner?
Vertical spinner, yes.
Man, we got a lot of vertical spinners, man.
Got a lot of vertical spinners. We sure do. But
and then Valkyrie was considered what?
A horizontal spinner, although it's really more of an undercutter because the bar is right on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, they look like they were classified as an undercutter.
Yeah, and I really like the look of HyperShock's wedge as well. I hope they do have the forks that they had last time for certain other fights, but I really like the wedge. It seemed to be very good armor. I guess.
HyperShock is driven by the guy that everybody considers to be a great driver, right?
Yes, most people here are considered to be a great driver, but Will Bells is a really good driver. Sometimes he makes stupid decisions, though.
Well,
sometimes.
Yeah.
Like
that might be true.
That almost got him bent over a desk
did.
in this fight.
So I thought the team captain for Valkyrie, she did not sound confident, I didn't think.
Really? Yeah, no, she didn't. She didn't.
No.
I'm just now remembering the pre-fight interview. She seemed to be mostly relying on the fact that HyperShock is still going to suck.
Yeah, Leanne was her name.
Leanne Cushion.
She did not sound confident.
No, not at all. Most of her strategy was like, well, last season they sucked, so this time they probably will too. And I was like, that's not a good idea to rely on that.
I didn't think so either. I thought HyperShock's tires looked very vulnerable.
They stood up really well to those slices that the bar gave to them. But
I didn't think. Are we talking about the fight now?
Well, I mean, if you're still talking about HyperShock, I'm just kind of defending the tires a bit.
Yeah, I don't like vulnerable. I don't like exposed tires. I think they're stupid.
Well, Valkyrie is a gorgeous robot, And if you say you don't care about the aesthetics on this one,
I like the design of Valkyrie. I mean, it looked cool. I agree with that.
we got one, ladies and gentlemen. We got one. Scott actually likes the way one robot looks so far.
It didn't look like a damn frog.
Screw off, man. And they cited a 9-second spin-up time on that weapon.
That's way too slow.
I don't think that's true because
I don't
I've seen
either.
test footage of it, and it spins up pretty dang quickly.
Well, it didn't in this fight. She's got to improve that.
Well-
She's going to get her ass kicked every fight. I mean, that's clearly the way to defeat her, and he did it. He was on her quick.
Oh, yes.
If you got a slow spin-up time, you're screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge weakness.
But they spun up a lot faster than 9 seconds last season, even. And this season, they've got a lot more upgrades. And I've seen the test footage in the test box. It spins up pretty dang quick. Under 5 seconds, if not 4 or so.
It certainly didn't spin up in this fight.
Well, HyperShock is also pretty much the fastest robot in that field.
Well,
They got across the box
he was
so
on her.
fast.
He was on her fast.
Oh, yeah. That weapon had barely gotten started when they got a really good uppercut on it with their spinner. And Valkyrie's bar survived. Probably because it's made of AR-500, but, you know, that weapon had no imbalance in it whatsoever. I thought it was going to have little chips taken out of it, or maybe it would be broken apart at one point, but it looked completely fine, which I'm really impressed by.
You know, I also thought HyperShock, he was so aggressive that he got himself under the hammer, man. I mean, you know.
The V shape of Valkyrie kept them away from the pulverizer. They were hitting their own robot.
Yeah.
And they probably couldn't see it from where they were, so they just kept doing it a few times. I really wish they had showed a slow-mo shot of HyperShock getting out of the box, because I really wanted to see if their wheels spun at all.
HyperShock was hurt as well.
Yeah, they
I
were.
think HyperShock was hurt by that hammer.
Well, the hammer doesn't really do a lot.
I think it hurt its wheel. I think it hurt its tire. Look at the replay.
Oh,
Check
it
it
didn't
out.
hit the tire, though.
Yeah, I think it did. I'm telling you, I think that HyperShock's wheel tire assembly was hurt by that hammer.
It was hurt by Valkyrie's bar for sure. Even if I will go back and watch the replay later. I'll tell you when. But Valkyrie seemed to just kind of get stuck on top of something at the end, and that got
I also
them
thought
counted
they
out.
got hurt as well.
Because they got their wheels were spinning still, or at least one was, but they weren't going anywhere, which just makes me think they were high centered on something.
Possibly.
Or maybe their top armor was bent, which is a likely possibility because they got flipped over and were fighting a vertical spinner, which hits the underside. But I like you see. I mean, we both say that Leanne Cushing was very unconfident at the beginning of this fight.
Yeah,
she was getting into it though. She was going, yeah. I loved that. I loved how into it she was. She was pumped when they were.
Was she into it?
What? When she was screaming, yeah.
Was that during the
That
fight?
was during the fight. That was when Valkyrie started cutting the tops of HyperShock's tires off.
Okay.
Like,
Is she the driver or was somebody else driving?
she's the captain. She was not. She did not seem to be operating any part of the robot, though. No, that's really all there is to say about this fight. I guess
HyperShock was on her.
HyperShock
She
was on it.
spins up way too slow.
Never left her alone, and then got relentlessly mocked by Kenny Florian after the fight
he's
for going in
he
for
needs
some
to be
reason
smarter.
instead of just letting Valkyrie
He
get
needs to
counted
be
out.
smarter, man. You know?
He may have just been trying to make sure they were gonna get counted out though, because it looked like they were moving a bit. And to his credit as well, right as he was driving up to them, right before he got there, they swiveled around so the weapon was pointed at them, which he probably wasn't expecting them to be able to do. But regardless, they managed to do it, and HyperShock took a lot of unnecessary damage to it.
Yeah, he
and
did.
In the post-fight interview, not with Kenny Florian, but with what's her name, Jenny, in the pits, I really liked seeing how much the win meant to.
Well, I did too. I mean, you can see that these people, and certainly he puts a lot of effort into it.
A lot of money.
And
time.
and more even that than was the time and the energy.
Yeah.
And it was emotional for him. There's no doubt about it. You know,
Yeah.
it's a big deal to these people.
I could see him getting really choked up there. At the
Oh, he
end.
did?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably,
Yeah.
it's like a musician, and everybody tells him, go get a job,
Yeah.
basically give up on your dream. These people, I'm sure, are told, what the hell are you always in the garage working on a robot for,
Yeah.
He's probably getting grief from friends and family and his wife.
He said so.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he did.
And so, at least there's hopefully a little payoff for it.
Yeah.
And
And
sometimes chasing your dream is not supported by everybody else around you.
No, not usually. It's not. In fact.
Correct.
So all those of you who who want to be a professional basket weaver, underwater basket weaver, don't let anybody tell you that you'll never make any money out of it or that it doesn't exist, because you should follow your dream.
You'll never make any money out of it.
Don't listen to this naysayer.
Get a job.
Don't listen to this naysayer. And Valkyrie's a good robot, so this was a very impressive win for sure, especially since it was by KO. But they seemed to be smoking a little bit by the end of the fight, which I was fully expecting to happen, but I was still just like, no, when it did happen, because I was worried they were going to lose. And it also, even though they won, indicates that there are still some reliability gremlins in HyperShock's
I agree with that.
body. Yeah. Ugh.
He's going to get those wheels knocked right off.
I hope not, and I really hope he does well, because
he's going to get those wheels knocked off.
He's owed some good fights this season. Blacksmith Quantum, easily the worst part of the episode, even though it wasn't the worst fight.
I didn't think it was the worst. Oh well, I get your point. I like the fight, but we're not talking about the fight, right?
Not just yet. No, Quantum.
So this was the first fight that didn't have a vertical spinner in it.
No, it wasn't. What are you talking about? SawBlaze versus Rotator didn't have a vertical spinner in it. The first fight. Saws are not spinners, mate.
Oh, come on, man.
Saws are not spinners.
Come on, man.
They're not spinners. You can't tell me that's a spinner. It's a saw. I mean, you might as well label every robot a spinner because their motors spin around. Whatever, but
it was the first fight that didn't have any spinner in it.
Yes, that's a more accurate description.
Including something vertical.
Quantum,
a hammer versus a crusher.
Hammer versus a crusher. Quantum is beautiful.
Yeah, I like that robot.
Quantum is beautiful. All right. So this design is based on a robot called Spectre that looks very similar from, again, the Chinese show King of Bots, and This Is Fighting Robots. They were the reigning champion of King of Bots right now with Spectre. And for this season of Battlebots, this is the first time they've brought this design here to America. And they've used an Autodesk design simulator in CAD to optimize perfectly every part of that weapon so that every piece of it is exactly as thick as it needs to be to save as much weight and to survive its own force as it should be. And boy, does it look good.
It did look good.
This robot is one of the best looking machines I've ever seen. Not just on BattleBots, but any sport. Any robot combat association, any machine in any sort of field. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And it seems to be very effective. It's got, I know this thing has 30 tons of force on the teeth.
I thought it was very effective.
And like they used in this fight one tooth to essentially double the pressure.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And the only thing I see, because I was saying that they're definitely going to probably make the final 16, but might miss out on it due to losing a fight because they have no armor at all on that robot.
Oh, really?
At all. No.
That's liable to be a problem, man.
Yeah, that's liable
What
to
do
be
you
a
think of
problem.
hammers?
Hammers are really cool weapons, even though they don't do a lot of damage.
No, they don't.
Well, this one doesn't, but some do. Like Beta from Season 2, and this season, hopefully, Ragnarok. But we'll get to that when it's Episode 2 rolls around and they fight Monsoon.
I'm not sure that I have good thoughts on a hammer design.
Especially not one that sacrifices a lot of its practicality to have flames shooting out the end.
Yeah.
Al Kindle, the guy who drives this robot, he hates this robot more than anyone else in the world. He, on Discord, rips on hammers and flamethrowers so much. He hates this robot. He doesn't want to build it, but he knows that he needs to now because the audience loves it so much. Yeah, but Blacksmith. With that said, Blacksmith is a really good robot. It never gets knocked out, not even in this fight. They fought.
I'd consider it to have been knocked out.
Well, they were still fully functional. They were just stuck in Quantum's tooth.
Got his ass kicked.
He did get his ass kicked, and he always gets his ass kicked, but he always shows up to the fight and makes a difference. This robot is
didn't make it to the end.
Look, this robot is a solid mid-tier machine that constantly gets put up against top tiers.
Really, this should have been considered a knockout, I think.
You can only grab and hold for 30 seconds.
He wasn't holding him anymore.
He was trying
impaled.
to let go. He was trying to let go.
Well, that's my point. He wasn't held anymore. He was impaled.
But Blacksmith usually is very resistant to taking lethal damage. They fought Bite Force last season, hardly took any damage. They fought Minotaur last season and hardly took any damage.
Well, that's last season. Yeah. They took some damage.
They took some damage in this fight. They got set on fire internally. So the fight itself, I think, was easily the worst fight of the episode.
I disagree.
Which one do you think was the worst?
Well, I don't know, but I like the fight. I like Quantum kicked his ass, poked holes in him, and dominated the fight in control and aggression.
Yeah, they absolutely earned this win.
I like the fight.
Yeah, I like the fight too.
I didn't think it should have been a stopped. I think it should have been called a KO.
But
he was impaled and was not moving.
So the rule in the Robot Combat Fighting Association, I forget what it's called, is that if two robots get stuck together, then you need to stop the fight, and some guys go in there with a crowbar, pry them apart, and then as best you can, start the fight from right where it was left off, which is what they did. And then the second time, they were telling the truth when they said they had to use a hydraulic press to get that tooth out. Apparently it was a 2,000-pound force they had to use. That
They
was
need
a
a little
heck of a
bitty.
crush.
They need a little bitty jack they can put in there and just quickly actuate it and separate them.
You mean inside Quantum's mouth?
Well, no, between the two parts, between the two robots. You know,
You mean like the Jaws of Life?
basically a little mini version of that. Yes.
Ah.
I knew someone that had a device like that. It was pretty cool, man. It was, I think, for doing like maybe body work or something, and you could just slide it in there and just quickly, you know, it was a hydraulic little hand hydraulic pump, but with a hose, so you could, and you could just, it would just open these two little jaws, you know, and I think that would have worked great.
Yeah.
They need a device that can quickly go in there and separate them with some force. I don't think crowbars are the way to go.
Well, that's usually enough. Not in this case.
No, it wasn't.
That weapon on Quantum was majorly channeling Razor from the old days of Robot Wars. And because it just went straight through that AR-500 skin on top of Blacksmith.
Yeah, and
I've never seen anything like that.
I mean, I consider that still to be a knockout, man. I don't care what anybody says. In other words, I mean, they got immobilized because they were stuck to something, and that just happened to be his tooth.
Well, the thing is, I think your immobilization is considered in relation to the arena, not relative to your opponent. Because if your opponent pins you and they're driving around, you're moving. But if they stop moving and you're not moving, they're not moving either. So it would be a double knockout, which is what happened because they couldn't get them separated.
No, that's not what happened. What happened was he was stuck to his tooth. That's what happened.
So, do you want to hear about why I think this is not only the worst fight of the episode, but it genuinely left a bad taste in my mouth for the rest of the time? First of all, it's a bad fight because even though it was wildly entertaining how effective Quantum's weapon is, Blacksmith just got so bodied that it was frustrating, really. And I just feel bad for Al Kendall as well because he's lost so many fights, even though his robots are good. But also, like, Blacksmith only landed one hit with its hammer, whereas that robot usually lands like 50 hits a fight.
Man, this isn't a personality contest. Who cares about Al Kendall? His robot got his ass kicked.
No, what I mean is I wanted to see Blacksmith land a ton of hammer hits.
Well, he didn't.
I was looking forward to this fight because of that.
He didn't.
He didn't. No, he landed
Quantum was
one.
on him, pinned him, pinched him, bit him, boom.
What
over
Al
with.
Kendall should have done when he was being held was throw that hammer forward, have it be resting on the ground right next to Quantum, and guzzle fire. Because he did that at one point for a few seconds.
Man, that hammer wasn't even close to him, though.
Well, no, but it was like next to him. And you could see the first time they got stuck, he did that for a few seconds, and that flame was properly going under and getting stalled underneath Quantum and cooking.
Maybe.
Probably capable of severely heating up that robot.
I didn't notice that, but maybe so.
Well, I've watched every fight 6 times.
You know, what I didn't like was, whoever the driver was or the team of Blacksmith, they were like, "Oh, let us go, let us go."
Yeah, I think they should have been able to be like. Clearly, Quantum is trying to let them go. It just isn't able to. So
they were stuck.
They were probably trying to get the ref to stop the fight so they could be separated.
They were immobilized, man.
Well,
they were stuck in his tooth.
And then the other thing
and then he was doing spins.
Well, then the other thing I hate about this fight is that the way they chose to portray the really solid like stickage of Quantum's tooth the second time was absolute horseshit. They made it seem like nobody had any idea what to do, and they just, out of confusion, decided to let it go to the judges.
I agree with you completely. They should have anticipated this. They should have known that this can happen. They should have had a better outcome with this.
No. But the thing is, they did know what to do. What they did was they tried to do exactly what they did for the first time. They stopped the fight, and this time they left for this second time, they left the buzzer in. They left the ref telling them to put the controllers down. But what they didn't show was that just like before, they went in there and tried to get them unseparated, but this time they just couldn't get them unseparated. So they declared it a double knockout. So that's all fine. But why did they choose to make it seem like they didn't try to do that? And, like, I know Battlebots doesn't like to show the unsticking of robots, but if this happens, the best thing to show is them attempting to undam stick them.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're complaining about, to be honest.
Well, it just made it seem like it was completely unprofessional and really just
I agree.
Weird that they chose to portray it like this. And
I
also, the edit around that first unsticking was trash as well.
And that's my point. They should have anticipated something like this and handled it better.
But that edit around the first unsticking was trash. Because usually it's really good. You can usually tell where there was a cut. But this time, not only can you actually see the ref starting to wave his arms to get them to stop, but also the last time you see the robots, they're over by the screws with Quantum raising Blacksmith up onto the screws and getting it grinded up. And then suddenly the next shot, they're in the middle of the arena again. And then Kenny is saying, "Oh, there we go, Blacksmith is free," or maybe it was Chris, I don't know. But he was like, "Oh, there we go, like now it's free." It's like there was very clearly a cut there.
Well, I didn't notice that really. I mean, I don't like the way they edit these fights. I think that's a big problem.
What problems do you have with the editing then?
Well, that kind of stuff right there. I want to see what's going on, not you hiding it from me.
Yeah. But other than that, I guess I'm very impressed with Quantum. And I really wish Al Kindle had thought to use the fire while he was stuck. But other than that, there is one other thing I wanted to say is that as soon as Quantum was biting down on Blacksmith for the first time, a drive chain comes out of their right side and just lays on the floor for the rest of the fight.
Oh, really?
And I cannot tell what that was for. I'm assuming it was for the right side of Quantum's drive, but they were driving completely fine for the entire rest of the fight.
I thought they were just spinning.
Well, it was because they had the weight of a 250-pound robot pulling their front down, and the wheels are at kind of in the front, but also way at the back.
Maybe.
I think their wedge was scraping on the ground really hard and taking a lot of pressure away from those wheels.
We don't really know, really, when you get right down to it.
We don't really know, yeah.
Maybe that drive chain was for that side that was...
I don't know, but they were driving well enough to land a bite on the exact same spot, exactly where they said they were going to, on Blacksmith again.
Yeah.
That is really, really good driving.
It punched through that armor, man.
And from what I heard,
their point is accurate. You're going to put armor like that on there. Get ready. We punch through. There you go.
I'm just scared that all of Quantum's fights might be like this now.
Well, what's the problem? I mean, that's their weapon.
But it might make the fights weirdly edited or boring if they do decide to show
they need
all
to
the
anticipate that and have a fix for that.
Yeah,
like
the Jaws of Life.
He's punching some holes in them, man. That's his weapon, and it's working.
Yeah, they should have tried the pulverizer, the hammer that comes down. And if they did, I wonder why it was edited out.
I do wonder if they'd have made their tooth a little longer, could they actually get completely into really important stuff? I guess they hit their controller, right? Isn't that what they're?
No, they broke through the gas tank and made it catch fire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the gas tank for the flamethrower.
Okay. That's what the driver of Blacksmith said, or
that's what the team captain of Quantum was going for, and also they pointed out in the commentary. They said they'll be aiming for that left side because they happen to know that that's where the tank is stored. Wouldn't it be funny if they somehow rejigged it to where it was not in that spot and Quantum just biting down on nothing? They'd be like, "Wow, man, where is it?" Well,
I think hitting electronics might be even more important.
I mean, if you got something that you know is important up in the front of that robot, then why not just go for that instead of wasting time trying to get around to the back, which you may not be able to do. Because Al Kindle is a good driver. Even though he was thoroughly outdriven in this fight, they kept getting around to his front corner instead of being blocked by those forks on Blacksmith's front, which only got under Quantum once. But yeah, this fight would have gone much differently, I think, if Al had managed to keep those forks pointed at Quantum the entire time, but he was unable to.
Yeah, I think Quantum kicked Blacksmith's ass.
Yeah, it did. It thoroughly did. And I don't think there's any controversy here. I'm just annoyed by how they chose to portray the events of that second bite. But, yeah. So, the main event, Tombstone and LockJaw. So
some more spinners.
More spinners, but good ones, I guess. Although LockJaw is I kind of dislike LockJaw because they jumped on the meta, as we discussed. But they are a really good robot. That plow on the back let them beat Son of Waiachi, a spinner that's even more powerful than Tombstone last year, by just taking the hits and just out-wedging Son of Waiachi until their weapon broke, and then they were able to use the spinner to deal some damage to them and win the judge's decision. And the wheels, I think, they're angled outward a little bit. I don't really know what that's for, but they seem to have a much shallower angle. They seem to be more upright this season than last season, where they were almost at like a 30-degree angle to the floor. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about LockJaw. I'm not a big fan.
LockJaw is a vertical disc spinner, right?
Yes. I'm not a big fan, but it's objectively a good robot.
And then Tombstone is a horizontal bar spinner?
Yes.
Tombstone definitely has exposed wheels.
But those are bait. Tombstone's never gotten its wheels touched.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
He must be a pretty good driver.
He's a very good driver, especially
his technique is really good.
So
are we talking about the fight now?
Well, not quite yet. Tombstone does a lot of damage to itself as well over the course of the series, which is why Ray brought 2 Tombstones this year, 2 frames. And apparently from last year, Tombstone is now 1 inch smaller in every direction. It's even more compact now. The frame is made of thicker steel. It's able to stand up to its own hits better. I don't think the weapon's really changed at all, but he's brought back his red bar and a few more different types of bars to use. I don't think the titanium bar, the heaviest one, is there anymore. It's gone. But yeah, I'm really excited to see all its matchups this season. So let's talk about the fight.
I thought Tombstone, man, had a good technique, man. Backing in there, rotating around, knocking those wheels right off.
It's so awesome to see, of all things, Tombstone outplay its opponent instead of just hit it enough to kill it. I must admit, I never thought I'd see Tombstone turn around and back into the opponent.
It was a good move.
Apparently
he's done that before, huh?
Well, what he usually does is, he'll let the guy chase him for about 10 feet, and then what he'll do is...
It's pretty much the same thing.
What he'll do is he'll turn around really quickly to the left.
Right.
Which is weird, because this time he turned to the right.
Yeah, he did turn to the right.
Because Tombstone's bar, when you look at it from the top, spins clockwise, right? And therefore, it turns left extremely quickly, and it turns right a little more slowly. So what he'll do is usually he'll have his back facing the opponent. He won't do what he did in this fight, which is to just literally back into them.
But he gets them at his rear.
Yes.
Whether they chase him or whether he backs into them, he gets them to his rear and then just spins right around.
But this was way more cheeky and way more just hilarious than anything like what I was just describing.
Go for it, man.
This was genuinely a 200 IQ play.
The guy.
Right.
I mean, and really, LockJaw's driver kind of admitted that he should have drove better.
Yeah.
And
this really brings up a thought I had as soon as this fight was announced. First of all, everybody wanted this to be Bite Force versus Tombstone, because when during that wonderful Facebook Live video when they were announcing each fight, when he announced the main event of the first episode, he was like, "So it's going to be Tombstone versus." And he left a pause, and everybody was kind of going, Bite Force, Bite Force, Bite Force. And then he said, LockJaw. And everyone was like, huh? I was like, what? I don't want LockJaw versus Tombstone. Sure, that may be a great fight, and it kind of was, but, nothing thematically between those two robots is going to make this a really hype match. I wanted Bite Force versus Tombstone, although let's be real, that's probably going to be the final. Just take a sip of my Pepsi there to recharge for a second. It kind of brings what I meant to say a minute ago was that a horizontal spinner like Tombstone has one giant advantage over a full body spinner like Son of Waiachi, and it actually not only did it occur to me at the time, but it's actually literally the thing that won Tombstone the fight. Is because that bar is held out way far in front of the wheels. So when Tombstone turns, the bar can swing back and forth a lot. So horizontal spinners like Tombstone, and Ray does this all the time, is that they're able to turn to move the bar out of the way of defensive attachments that the opponent might have and potentially get hits on the wheels or hits on the exposed body. And full body spinners can't do that because their weapon is right between their wheels.
Yeah.
So when they turn, the weapon doesn't move, just stays exactly in place. So
He's got a good design, no doubt about it.
Oh yes, it is all offense, but it's still an extremely tough robot because it's made of so much steel.
Yeah, it is.
And Ray is a master at driving that thing.
Yeah, he
When
is.
that hit happened, when I saw Tombstone turn around and kind of back up and to where its backside was pressed up against LockJaw's plow, I just thought, okay, what's he doing? And then he turned around and got both of LockJaw's wheels in the same hit. This was an amazing end to a very short but sweet fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, exposed tires are a huge liability. Granted, they both had exposed tires and wheels,
Yeah.
but Tombstone clearly knocks them off.
Oh, yes. It seemed to knock off part of the motor casings as well.
Oh, it did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a heck of a hit either way.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first episode of Season 4 of the reboot of Battlebots. Overall, really good episode, really solid.
I thought so too. You like to refer to it as Season 4 instead of Season 2019?
Yeah, Season 4 is what we're going to refer to it, I guess.
Okay.
We may occasionally call it Season 9 because it is the 9th overall season
I think
of Battlebots.
we should call it 2019. That way we all know what we're talking about. That's how they also refer to it in the
In the episode itself?
No, in the statistics on each robot, they have 2016, 2018, 2019.
Yeah, you're right. They
I think we should refer to this 2019. That way we're not wondering when the hell Season 3 was, Season 2 was, Season 1 was.
Yeah, actually, I agree. You've convinced me. Fair play.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well then in that case...
2019, Episode 1, down.
In that case, I guess we will see you guys next week for our review of Episode 2. You got anything more to say?
Nope, looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, hopefully it only goes up from here. Hopefully the editing gets a little better.
Yes.
And hopefully the sound a little bit better, because I didn't really like the way they added in sound effects for the slow-mos replays at the end. Especially SawBlaze's Saw, because every time they did that, it was the exact same sound. It was like...
I don't like effects.
It was annoying. Yeah.
Edited in crap.
The fight I'm most excited for next episode is Ragnarok and Monsoon.
You know for a fact they're fighting?
Yes, I do, because we've seen little previews in it, and also I made the mistake of going through the opening montage of this episode frame by frame to see what was going on in each one, and I got spoiled on a lot. I couldn't resist, man.
So you're saying in the episode there's giveaways, there's spoilers? For
Well,
next?
yeah, in the opening montage, it would play like a tenth of a second of a clip of each fight. Not of each fight of the season, but of some fights that had big hits. And I went through it like frame by frame to see who the robots were and what kind of damage there was
That
to each
doesn't
one.
mean they're fighting the next episode.
No, it doesn't, but Monsoon and Ragnarok will be in the next episode. At least I'm fairly sure they will be. If they're not, then I won't be surprised.
Fairly sure is not certain.
Okay, well, if they're not, then joke's on me, I guess, but I'm pretty sure they were.
When
They
does
will be.
the fight card come out?
I don't know. I think it'll probably be Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
I can't remember when this one was released, but...
So what do you think of the episode, the one fight that shows up on Science Channel?
I mean, the Science Channel bonus fights are usually bad. And this one has, who is it? Marvin, Gruff, and Gemini. And Gruff is a robot that is really good on robo games. Marvin is a robot with a plastic spinner. I'm not kidding. And Gemini is a clusterbot, and clusterbots are bad, so I don't really have high hopes for this fight at all.
Yeah, I won't
I'm
probably be able to
sorry.
see that. I don't think I can see that fight.
Yeah, I can't watch it because I don't have access to the Science Channel. Because I watch these on Discovery Go, and Science Channel's not going to be posted there.
I'm not a fan of them putting the damn 8th fight on a different network.
Yeah, this episode was sorely lacking a fight, I think, because the pacing just kind of was too slow at some points, and like I
was okay
said,
with that.
2 ad breaks right before judges' decisions was egregious to me. It wasn't overly terrible, but
It's marketing.
it was still annoying.
It's advertising. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, it was still annoying though.
It happens in every prize fight almost.
Doesn't mean I have to like it.
No, you don't. I mean, network prize fights, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's about
All
it.
right, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
See you next
cool.
week.
See you next
Bye.
week. Yeah. Bye-bye, everybody.